mean actually throw it out because, yeah, Steph, we know it's about a couple of senators who have to straighten their spine and say that actually we're playing a game that's different from the one Donald Trump wants us to play, while also Pete Hegseth, in specific, is serving as a bit of a meat shield for the other nominees that we have heard about because, of course, a meat shield, a heat shield. I prefer the meat shield. But,
Stevie,
yeah.
what is your take on Donald Trump being named Time Person of the Year?
Well, I think he earned it, frankly. You know, I don't know what the odds were, but they had to be pretty high, you know, at some point. And I think he was very clever on how he went about getting this done, you know. Now, the Democratic Party helped, of course. They did all they could to help, let's face it. But, you know, I think nobody thought he could get back into the White House a second time after the first debacle. But he proved everybody wrong. And I'm sorry, but that's the biggest upset of the year, I think.
I feel like people might be trying to fluff his ego a little bit just to make maybe in the hopes that he'll go a little bit easier on the public.
Yeah, but hold on a minute. Is Time Magazine looking to fluff his ego?
Why not? But, I mean, look, I don't necessarily think Time Person of the Year has to be the best person or even a good person. They did name Hitler Time Person of the Year once. But I think
who had the year of note?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And what I think is happening here is a reflection of what we're seeing with these CEOs. For example, you know, you saw Mark Zuckerberg put in $1 million to his inauguration. Then you see Jeff Bezos doing it. And at some point, it's actually doesn't feel like a gift. It's not altruistic. That is an ante that they're putting in. And honestly, like, could they bend the knee any harder? I don't know.
But are we putting CEOs, and I'm not defending them, in the correct cat? At the end of the day, a CEO is a pragmatist, right? They're not based on principle.
They've never donated to inauguration.
Pardon me?
They've never donated to an inauguration before, though.
CEOs have in the past. Different business leaders, different businesses have definitely given to inaugurations in the past. Mark Zuckerberg has said he wasn't going to. Clearly, he changed his tune. And right now, a lot of people are angry that sort of CEOs and business leaders are bending to Donald Trump. And I get that. But at the same time, it's not necessarily how they feel about him personally. They need to make sure their business is running. They need to make sure their customers are showing up. And they know the kind of guy who's about to be in the White House. And they know what it's like, or they've seen what it's like to be Bob Iger and Disney on the wrong side of the president. And they're basically saying, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, they're pragmatic, but look at Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, here's somebody in 2015 who said, I want to work to solve immigration reform. Donald Trump has said he should go to jail. And now he's like, well, hey, you know what? I want to give you a little bit of money for this inauguration, and let's see where we can come together here. It'll be really interesting to see what this administration does with big tech. I think that could be some similarity between the end of Biden and the beginning of Trump on breaking up the big tech monopolies, but we'll see if it actually happens. But let's look at this on a macro level. This cabinet, this is the billionaire boys club. I mean, these guys, they want to get in on this because there's a good chance the gravy train is going to benefit them. So hop on board. I mean, this is a plutocracy, oligarchy, whatever you want to use. This is a lot of money at stake in these corporations. They're not dumb. I agree with you. They want to hop on this. There's a seat for them. This train.
Here's the thing with Donald Trump's cabinet picks, some of the people for the biggest roles. It's not that because you're wealthy, you can't have the job. Think about some of the things they're trying to get rid of, right? Yes. If we get rid of the FDIC, you could lose your life savings. If we did not have Obamacare, millions of people could lose health care. If we didn't have the poll, if we didn't have vaccines, people could be dead. If we didn't have fluoride, the teeth in your head could fall out. Is the issue with the people he's chosen that they've never been at risk? They don't know what it's like to potentially lose everything. So you're putting them in roles where they're looking to care for the masses, and they don't actually know what that entails.
Yeah, they're motivated by self-interest, which is financially, I think, discernible. But it's also just the entire campaign again. It's the idea of, okay, these institutions, you should not trust them because they're corrupt, and because these are unelected bureaucrats, and because they don't have your interest at heart. Meanwhile, Kash Patel, let's just keep this clear too, the dude was selling supplements about COVID-19 vaccine detoxification. He was, in fact, palling around with QAnon in very documented ways. He is telling you these things, the FBI itself is corrupt, so help me clean it up. Meanwhile, every signal he is giving, if you just read the actual text is saying, my main motivation here is, in fact, self-interest. It is scamming. It is corruption. It is the exact thing he is campaigning against. But institutions, Steph, as we have learned over and over again, are so unpopular that that can read as a relative neutrality, as populism, when in fact it's always been very clear what it is.
Stevie, Donald Trump has always been a transactional guy. He's a hustler from the get. Here we are, Trump 2.0. He's now surrounded by people saying, hey, we're about to get in on the hustle too. I'd like to make a quick buck. How concerned are you?
This is what the American people voted for, okay?
They knew what they were getting. There were no surprises.
I mean, there's no surprises here, all right?
Why did they vote for this then?
Well, and the Time magazine thing is not just Donald Trump, but it's winning the House and Senate and popular vote. I mean, this is a dominant victory, you know, and everything that goes with it. And how interesting is it that this guy could not be more openly corrupt, right? I mean, he's a felon, right? I mean, we know that, right? But the Democratic Party didn't seem to put up much of a fight, you know? I mean, how does a former AG, a former attorney general, a former district attorney lose to a convicted felon? You know, I know how. You know, I tried to tell them and they wouldn't listen. But, you know, the Democratic Party is very much part of the problem here. You know, not Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump and his whole cabinet, and it's what an insane group it is, they do what they do. You know, I mean, you can't tell bad guys not to be bad guys, in other words. Okay? You know, it's the good guys not doing their job is my problem. You know, it's the DNC that's my problem, you know, not the Republicans. You know, why do they let the trans operation in jail thing go? You know, that ad ran every 30 seconds, right?
The ad ran every 30 seconds.
Not responding to that was very much like
game that we
Kerry
watched, right?
with boats, not
Every
responding.
sporting event.
Every sporting event. And why didn't they say this policy was instituted under the Trump Justice Department? Okay, did you ever hear that?
No.
No, nobody heard that. That's a Trump policy. Okay, and that's what got him elected, is that kind of insanity, and it is insanity. I'm sorry, you know, that kind of thing. It's the super woke stuff that people react to.
But the thing is, a lot of the super woke stuff isn't even real, but the Republicans made it like it was real, and Democrats didn't stop them.
Exactly right. But there is always an element of truth, though.
Yes.
As I tried to tell people, if 70 million people are voting for him, it's not just lies and a con and grifting and Russian manipulation, although all that's in there. There's got to be an element of truth, all right? If 70 million people are voting for somebody, there's something in there that's the truth, okay? And the Democratic Party does not address that little truth.
I think one thing that Trump has done a masterful job at is muddied the water so much so that a lot of people who don't pay very close attention to politics think all politicians are corrupt. This guy's, of course, going to be on the take. But you know what? He's shaking it up. He's fighting. He's making all those bastards who I don't like uncomfortable, and that's a good thing. And I don't think the Democratic Party has done a good job responding to that. And I think there's been this, we take the high road, we're going to hold hands, and everyone's going to come together for the beauty that is America and these beautiful pillars of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unfortunately, with the media ecosystem the way it is, that stuff is not selling. And for those low information voters who cut to Trump 3-1, the ones who do not pay that close attention to the news, they look up and they go, yeah, this guy has Hunter Biden, you know, Hunter Biden's corrupt, Biden crime family, Pelosi has all these stock options that she gets all the, gets a heads up on. The Democrats are just as bad. I'm going to go with this guy, Trump, who speaks like me, acts like me, makes jokes that I like. It's not far-fetched. And I think 16 was a surprise. This time around, you could see where it was going.
But it's also just that corruption, all corruption is not created equally, right?
Yeah.
Like, frankly, I mean, not to just interrupt, but like, there are degrees of this, but when all you remember is a lyric, a refrain, an image, you're not actually trying to measure, you're just seeing hypocrisy everywhere. And yes, technically, there is hypocrisy everywhere.
100%, but I think that none of this explains the Democrats' failure to come up with a message of resonance and salience that actually people are hearing. Because sure, you can combat what they're saying all day. You can say, that's not true, but I think we even know that scientifically, when you tell people, when you try to correct misinformation, it doesn't actually work in people's minds. But I think that if they had come with a new message, something more connective and understanding, but I think that, you know, in all the postmortems of this campaign, I think what we see is that they did not do that, and I don't think they even now understand how and why, and to the full extent they fail to do that.
Okay, hold on, new topic, because there's something else I really want us to cover, because there has been huge reaction in the last week, right? We saw Daniel Penny, his acquittal, and at the same time, and a very, very, very different situation, but Luigi Mangione, the man who's now accused of the murder of the United Healthcare CEO, two very different situations, but in both situations, there's a person dead. And reactions that we are seeing are hugely celebratory in some circles, right? J.D. Vance is taking Daniel Penny to the Army-Navy football game tomorrow. And what we've seen in the last few years, right, we see the media divide us. We see that, you know, sex sells, but anger and hate sells even more. How concerned should we be, though, that the American people, groups of the American people, are celebrating violence? Like, violence, that's the solution. That's what everyone should be doing these days. How concerned are you that this is where we are in this celebratory mode?
Very concerned. And of course, our hearts go out to the family, the Neely family. And nobody should die in these situations. But I hope it starts to emphasize the trouble we're having with the mental health, you know, ignoring the mental health problems, in not only in our city, which is considerable, but in our country.
Part of the issue is people feel ignored, right? Either it's they're feeling ignored and their issues aren't being addressed. Life is unfair. They're being ignored. They can't cover their bills. They can't. Look at all the people that have gotten behind Luigi Mangione saying, my life is unfair. And no one's condoning violence, but there's something happening among the American people that are saying, I'm not being heard. Things aren't safe or okay for me. Let's tear up the script and do something different.
Yeah, do the politicians have a sense of what actually matters to people? In everyday life, this is the thing that Trump fundamentally ran against and ran on, that message. And look, the United Healthcare CEO being murdered in broad daylight like that. I mean, look.
2 blocks from here.
2 blocks from here. You can acknowledge, Luke, that that healthcare in America is one of the great humiliations of American society.
But that's not a reason to murder a person.
No, but
and at the same time, I think it's humorless and our duty to say, this is a line that we need to be very clear about to never cross. That's what makes a free society.
But we're not being clear about that line, and people are saying an eye for an eye. What happens to society when we get there?
I think this country, of which there are more guns than people, it's a scary time. I do think, though, we do have a history of violence in this country. I was going through notes today, and I was reminded of the name Leon Cholgus, an anarchist who killed President William McKinley in Buffalo, New York. I was reminded of the name Eric Robert Rudolph. Do you remember him, the Olympic bomber, who also bombed a gay and lesbian bar, who also bombed abortion clinics? There were signs in Appalachia that said, "Run, Eric, run." So there's been an appetite for violence in our country throughout our history, especially the politics. I think that what makes it so different now is it's magnified.
The media monetizes and celebrates.
Correct, and it's also the fringe is now become part of the mainstream media because of the podcasting, because of everybody having a voice at the table. There's no filter anymore. So I actually think someone like Eric Robert Rudolph would probably be celebrated